Hey everybody. I'm back with some more progress on the short that's still kind of called Eulogy. Though, I mean, if I'm being honest, I've been looking around to see like what kind of other names I could do. So like yesterday, spent like I don't know, maybe like 30 minutes searching around, seeing what else I could choose. And so it kind of came like with a bunch of other weird names like Hullabaloo and Ruckus and stuff like that. None of them really fit, but I'm just like, I don't know. Eulogy, I think probably fits. I mean, it's to the point. It has everything that it kind of like needs to be about, because that's what the movie's about. And you know, it's real simple. I don't know. I just really wanted to see if there's something like a different name that isn't necessarily one word because so far a lot of my movies have been one word names. It's like, I mean, yeah, but I'd like to like shake it up and do something that feels a little bit different. But for now, it's still going to be Eulogy. It doesn't matter. Names come last, but I was just trying to figure that out. Anyway, so currently what I'm doing, so last time I talked about how I was kind of like figuring out the characters, figuring out the overall theme of the entire thing, and then um, kind of like finding my direction. And so, one of the things that I think is important when starting a project is to have some sort of North Star, a direction that's going to keep you going, so that you aren't lost. And if you are lost, then you'll definitely be able to find your way back, because oftentimes I think uh, you can get yourself lost, and you don't you shouldn't have to worry about like, oh man, what was this? What was the initial feeling, the initial story of that I was following? So so the thing is for me is this thing I have to keep coming back to is anxiety, breath, and the loss of breath when you're hit with all these feelings and emotions, because that's how I constantly feel these past few weeks. Not that I don't feel that in my normal everyday life. I'm constantly on the verge of fucking exploding whenever I work on a project. Like every time I'm just like, oh God, do I know how to do this? Are my skills suck now? Are my skills suck, as the great writers of the world usually say? Uh, Man, yeah, I that feeling, I just need to make sure that that is the North Star. So I usually like write it, circle it, and remind myself constantly before I start writing or start going through a project. It's like, okay, um, this is the direction I'm going. Remember what these people feel like, remember what they are doing, whether it's a turn of phrase or just a sentence or whatever, keep that North Star safe. Um, I'd also suggest, I'm very audio focused. So when it comes to acting or writing or whatever, I usually have to say things or make sounds or do things. Because of my auditory senses, what I typically like to do, and I know other people like to do as well, but I think it helps just to remind people is to have like a playlist. You know, what does your film feel like at the moment? A lot of times, what I'll do is I'll like go through music and I'll just find different playlists, find different artists, and I'll um, start liking and creating a unique playlist that has like the soul of whatever I'm writing about. I know soul sounds very like blah, art, blah, but that's what it feels like to me. Is that I'm trying to uh, find like the emotional rhythm of this piece. So, uh, like for Silhouette, my second film, one of the artists that I kind of went to was Sunlux. If anyone knows Sunlux, Sunlux is kind of like a very like sad band, a very sad boy band. They use a lot of digital synthetic music, and they're able to allow themselves the softness that kind of like makes me feel ooh or whatever. I know that's a weird way to describe it, but a lot of their music is what allowed me to write Silhouette and stay focused. And so then I found more songs, and then Lord Huron, Vincent McMorrow, a couple songs from them. And every time I'd listen to this playlist, my brain and my heart would automatically get locked in, and then I'm just going, moving forward, and back into that world. Similar here, I kind of have a playlist that I'm kind of going back to now and again because obviously it's not so hard at the moment to find the rhythm and the soul of this song, of this short, just because I'm right now currently going through it. I'm feeling it, as most of you probably are. And so uh, at the moment for this one, it's less of a playlist and more of like I'm going to start a Spotify play not playlist, radio station based off of this one artist, the Antlers, and a lot of the music that have been coming out there have been similar in terms of scope for what this short is. And then, of course, I'll pick the ones that are the best for my specific short and put them in a thing. Um, so yeah, whatever you need to do, find your North Star, keep it with you, and allow yourself to come back and sit in it. I know a lot of writers don't like to listen to music. For me, that's weird because I need to just constantly be emotionally stimulated, whether it be, taking a break watching a movie, taking a break watching a TV show, listening to my playlist, or rewriting uh, character moments or character dialogue, free writing in the train of thought. I think it's important for any writer just to keep that train of thought and emotion going. So whatever you have to do it. Unless it's murder man, then don't do that because you don't want to murder man every single time you're writing. That'd make you a monster. Um, so kind of like me solidifying that is what I've been doing lately. And as I, re-enter the kind of emotional thing of this short, another thing that I'm doing is I'm starting to make beats. And the way that I do is start usually is like I do a lot of just I have literally a document every time I write. That's just called free write, and that's just my brainstorming one. And then I obviously italicize, bold certain words or key phrases or ideas that pop out. Um, and then I have a separate document for called notes and stuff. And these are notes and stuff are things that are probably going to stick. So free writing, I just kind of vomit out whatever, anything. That's where I kind of do um, where I pretend to be characters or whatever, or write hypotheticals, background history, um, uh, theoretical thoughts about the emotions of the story. Whenever I get lost, that's where I go. And then once things start to stick and things start to feel true, or I've managed to find something for the story, I grab that and put that into notes and stuff. And that's where the shape starts to roughly come out in terms of things that are have a greater possibility of affecting the story or not. And so uh, since last time, I've just been vomiting out ideas because the characters have been a little bit more solidified, and now they have weight and heat to them, where I can, oh, that's this person, oh, that's that person. And so now I'm just like, what is going to push this person? Just random ideas. They don't have necessarily have to be like standout moments, but just things that could possibly happen in this world. There's no organization, just things at the moment. So that's what I started doing. Uh, and as that happens, you're going to find yourself thinking about like, well, what does the rhythm of the entire film itself take? Um, and that's where like certain ideas are going to pop out, and certain ideas for how certain sections of the films are going to pop out. So what I've kind of discovered is I do want the first half to be a little bit lighter purposely, because it's going to bring more weight to when things get heavier in the second half. Um, I don't know if that's just a tendency for me personally, but I do know that I think that um, when it comes time when like eulogies and funeral stuff, there's the odd morbid humor that happens, uh, and they're always inappropriate or weird, but I think there's a humor involved with it, and also it allows the emotions for when you have to actually experience the funerals, like the catharsis of it to really release and come through because of that kind of weird humor. And I say that because I mean, we've all gone through that, the gallows humor that we kind of have naturally, or I have naturally. I remember going to a funeral and I had to do a eulogy. And what I thought was so funny was that I did the eulogy and then we buried the person. And then after that, the priest came out and he was like, "Hey, by the way, that was a wonderful eulogy you said. It was so beautiful. By the way, what do you use in your hair? Your hair looks fantastic. I mean, do you put like gel or something?" And I was just like dumbstruck, and I had no idea what the fuck this priest was talking about. I thought that was so great. You know, at the moment, I was like, "What the fuck is this guy talking about?" But now, like retrospectively, I think that's so funny. It's just like you're at a funeral, you're crying, you're with loved ones, and you just bury somebody, and then suddenly the priest is just like, "Well, let me talk about the fashion of your hair. What is happening? You are just beautiful." I love that. And so, that also like just me doing improv a lot. I think comedy is important, and specifically for me, I don't I don't want to put comedy. I just want to put humor. There's a difference. Comedy, obviously, there's the intent of joke. There's the setup, punchline, all that stuff in terms of physical or how people are talking or situational. But humor, I think, is more circumstantial to the events going on. And that is what I think is important for to show humanity. Humor, not necessarily comedy. Humor, I think, kind of shows a little bit more insight in characters. Um, and they're not trying to be jokes. It's just like little moments. So when it came to the funeral I was at, and especially with this one, I think having just a little bit of humor sprinkled in the front is going to allow the second half to really hit harder. And so, like, that kind of tone is what kind of I've discovered. And also, that's naturally my personality. I kind of have a little heaviness and depression and anxiety naturally, just because that's how I am. And then also, I like to make light of things because that's how I deal with stress and stuff that are naturally heavy, like when it comes to bad situations. So, obviously, depending on the film you're making, depending on your personality, you're gonna find your rhythm or your or the way the flow is gonna hopefully be for your short. And the free writing helped me discover that. But after you kind of like know the intent about the rhythm of the short, that's for me at least when I start trying to create like actual beats. I know I said beats before, but like those are like tiny little beats that could happen within a scene. But like actual bigger beats in terms of like what is the scene about? Not necessarily like what's the goal of the character in the scene, emotional or uh, or physical or literal. I mean, like, what is, as the artist, what is the goal of having a scene like this? What am I trying to show? Um, and then, then you can go down to the nitty gritty and show the intent of these characters of the in their film world. So let me see. So what I kind of did is I kind of like made I make kind of like rough um, sequence beats and sequences, a couple of scenes kind of strung together in order to make a longer segment. And so I try to find the goal of each sequence in terms of like what is it trying to say? Um, and the way that I broken it down is how emotionally I deal with anxiety when something terrible happens. since this is kind of like an emotional metaphor for going through COVID. Um, it's like, how am I processing this? Um, and how do I usually process tragedy? And my friends as well, how do they deal with that? Just trying to figure that out and make it simple. Well, obviously, the first thing that is kind of happening is um, dealing with the things that we've lost, because obviously things are different before, things are going to be different now. So what am I dealing with? Okay, so there's a loss. So obviously there has to be a scene that has to deal with the things that have been lost. And since I want it to be lighter, odds are it's going to be a lighter scene. So things that are lost, when you think of something that's lost, you think of the negative aspects of having it been lost, and you also think of the positive aspects of the thing itself. So if we're going to work our way to someone saying a eulogy, which is acknowledging the things that have been lost in kind of an emotional way, uh, the way to start, I believe, and this could all change through subsequent drafts. The way to start is through thinking about what is the polar opposite of having that emotional thing. Obviously, it's having a non-emotional, not non-emotional, but a less heavy thing that doesn't directly deal with the catharsis of the ending. So we have thinking of they're both thinking of what was lost, but one of them is dealing through more emotional, revelatory moments, and the other one should not. So, so bringing it down, what was lost, his brother, and that's kind of our past life. And what is he doing? He's thinking about his brother. We think about our past life that is before this whole COVID. And what specifically are we thinking about of the past thing that was lost? The good. We're only thinking about the good. So in a way, because I've discovered that the character is kind of single trained mind to only think of to not want to acknowledge the tragedy of what was lost and what has happened, he's going to be only thinking about the good stuff of his brother, and he's not going to think about the bad stuff at all. So, um, eulogy confronts reality. He's not going to confront reality. So the ending is confronting through the eulogy. The beginning is now going to be about him confronting it through a non-eulogy. And so the way that I've kind of come to see it so far is that it's going to start with him trying to write the speech, and you're hearing him say things that would normally go with the eulogy, but instead it's written in a way that sounds more like if it were a speech for someone graduating, or maybe like a best man speech, because in those ones, you kind of make fun of the person a little bit. You you poke jokes and poke holes, and you say things that are fun, um, and they don't necessarily deal with hard stuff. Um, you know, um, and so that's kind of how it's going to start, is him just ignoring the bad stuff, the reality that he's dead, and more just dealing with like what were the good qualities that were fun, and that he liked to make fun of his brother, and that would make him laugh, and that's all he's dealing with. And so through the verbiage, there's kind of an inherent denial, and that's through really parsing out the way that things are said, and the nouns and the verbs, really thinking microscopic, but it's all going to get smoothed out. And this is just going to be the first draft, and it's very, shit. The first draft is always shitty. And afterwards, you're going to clean it up. So, just the point to vomit it out is having that kind of like initial burst of that. Then there's going to be within each sequence, there's always a rhythm change. And so the rhythm change is going to be from comedy to slightly more real. And because this is a short is obviously a condensed version of a feature, depending on the style of short. And for this one, for me, I'm creating a story with a beginning, middle, and end. Uh, Whereas a lot of shorts, at least the way that I've noticed, is that there's let's go in, punch, and cliffhanger. I'm not necessarily a fan of that. That's good training for filmmaking, but I'm a storyteller in the sense of like a writer and director. So I need to think of it as more of a shorter, like a short version of a long story. So there's going to be an inciting incident. There's going to be a midpoint. There's going to be a climax. There's going to be a denouement. There's going to be, you know, all that stuff as best as I can because, this is hard as fuck, guys. I don't know if you know, but writing stories is hard as fuck unless, you're super good, which I'm okay, I'm trying my best, but if you're super good and you can get in first draft, go fuck yourself. Congratulations. Anyway, so the inciting incident is just going to be compacted straight into this first sequence because we don't have enough time to do any of that stuff. So right away, we're setting the tone of the world by him saying this kind of weird speech thing, trying to work one out, and it's not necessarily indicative of what the world is because it's kind of funny and he's acting a little weird. And then boom, we're hit with the call, which is a literal phone call from somebody, and that's where we get as smoothly and as best you can the information of the stakes and the weight of what's happening. So that's when we can say, that's when we can reveal what he's been saying has been actually for a eulogy and that there's a funeral tomorrow. And the person he's been talking about, who he references as his brother, uh, the funeral's for him. So that's where we can try to get the information as best we can out. Obviously, it's a very tricky situation because I like to have dialogue sound as natural as possible. And I know filmmakers in general want to do that. Uh, that's their goal, is to have things sound natural. But there's definitely a movie dialogue tone. If you watch certain movies or if you read certain scripts, there's like a weird tone in terms of how people speak and what the way that they speak to get information out is very like, this is a movie. I'm going to tell you what's important currently. Um, there's a genre of movie called mumblecore, and a lot of people hate that genre. I like it to an extent. And mumblecore is and even mumblecore people hate that it's called mumblecore because they're like, why are you categorizing us? But the truth is, people in it are a specific similarity in type. Um, so mumblecore is very natural, almost uh, completely improvised. There's improvised moments, but almost. So there's a lot of ums, uhs, and buts. There's a lot of non-speak in terms of they're saying things without really saying it. And it's up to the person watching to kind of parse together what's happening because, if you're talking to your friend, you're not going to say, "Hey, my friend George, my mother David is not being great. David is my father." There's no way there's going to be like that. I have cancer. Oh my God. It's not going to be like that. You just have to parse together and figure it out based on contextual clues of conversation. So, um, as best you can, try to know how a person would really talk to their friend and insert the pieces of information up apart. Don't bunch them together. Just give one bit to one person, one bit to another person, and that's what I have to do for this phone call because it's the call to adventure type of deal. So you have to, as best I can, make sure that as much of the information is kind of shown out, and that's kind of the end of that beat. And the rest of the sequences have to kind of emotionally flow in a similar way. This one ends at a downbeat, so the next sequence should obviously start in a sort of downbeat. Doesn't have to be as down, but it has to be in that kind of negative space, and then rise up to a slightly more positive before the sequence after that. It's a little bit more positive too, but then it ends at a lesser beat and a negative. It's gonna go like that, and then it's not like a rule you have to do. Robert McKee wrote a book called Story. It's great advice, to kind of start molding out rhythm in terms of emotional positive and negatives. You don't have to do that, but it's a great way to think, um, and it's a good way to help structure the pacing of everything in terms of rhythm. And so, you know, just just see as you're creating these sequences and just see if you can do that. Um, as with all writing and all art, there's no set structure, so you don't have to necessarily follow that. There's other books that say other things that are different and say like, oh, this guy's shit, that guy's shit. Listen to my stuff. Just pick what's good for you. You know, a little bit of Robert McKee, uh, a little bit of Story Solution, a little bit of this and that. That works for me, and then a little bit of my own instinct of what I like from movies in terms of like what works emotionally for me when I'm watching a movie. Um, so anyway, so the first beat sequence is going to be going that way because that's the information that I know that I need to get out. So obviously that ends in a downbeat. So the next sequence is going to be a down to positive for me. Um, so that first sequence, as a reminder, is only thinking about the good. You know, the placebo of having lost something. So once you get hit with that reality, boom, phone call, reality. Now the next kind of sequence, he has to deal with that. But what does that mean? Like, what does that actually mean, dealing with that? In terms of this story, what does that mean? Okay, so let's think about um, you get you get brought to reality of something you've lost. Now you have to think about it, right? So then the placebo's worn out. Uh, like, what is the pain from? You know, what is that pain from, and what exactly is that pain? This sounds super detailed, and like, oh, you're getting so detailed for detail's sake. Obviously, this is how I work. Other people can probably do it easier and be more blocky about their writing, but I don't know. I like to go through the weeds and find the little stuff and like really see what a thing is about. Um, Kind of like scientist. I didn't go to film school. I didn't do any of that stuff. So I had to learn to be a scientist on my own. So it's you know, you want some aloe vera rubbing alcohol? Come, it's in my bathtub. Come on, guys. You know, especially in this time. That's kind of what it's like making it on my own. So anyway, so obviously the loss has to do with anxiety, pain, all that stuff. But what is that about? It's about the loss of that future, that potential future. I'm writing about COVID emotionally. We lost a future, plans, a, a brightness that we saw. You know, I've seen a lot of posts about people saying, like, this was supposed to be my year. I was going to travel. I was going to get this job promotion. I was going to do this. I was going to do that. We lost something. I lost something as well. And so it's like the pain is coming from like, fuck, everything that I was working for is now in shambles. I, the thing that I loved is now just, so this beat is kind of like the first kind of, you know, fight with that, with dealing with that. Um, so now now he's brought back to reality. He has to write the eulogy in earnest, you know, earnest, scared, stupid. So here, um, he's not ready, obviously. This whole film is trying to get him to be ready. So then now you have to, now for me, at least from my understanding of how the story is revealing itself to me, is that, and that's how I kind of think in terms is I'm not just making the story, the story is revealing itself to me. And a lot of writers kind of think that way as well. Um, but so here, you know, like what is it? He's dealing with this pain of the reality, and reality comes knocking onto him. So the struggle to write this and the anxiety is going to rise up. There's going to be a frustration because he can't find the words to say. He's going to get angry. When you have anxiety, you lash out. You act outwards, and sometimes and that's a symptom of being inwardly hurt and lost. My cafe is still open, but not everyone, a lot of them, the customers are being shitheads. They're being really inappropriate, and they can go fuck themselves. And I know that's part of like a symptom of them being so nervous and just being like, "Oh God, my money is gone. So is mine. Oh God, I'm still so rich. Let me come get some coffee because it's a fucking essential." Um, so let me just be super rude to this guy just doing his job. Um, that's all symptomatic of their anxiety of what's going on. And then, of course, I'm going through anxiety. So, when I lash out at them by saying, hey, you can leave, get out, or, if a friend of mine says, get the fuck out, because they're being rude, these are all just us being on edge. And this guy's on edge. You have to think about it in that terms. Where is he? He's already in the negative. Doing things more to you is gonna make him more volatile. It's kind of like being a hangry. The Snickers commercials. I'm very much a hangry individual. When if I'm hungry, I become irritable and angry, and then suddenly I start lashing out at people like, "Where's my fucking tacos?" So this is the same thing, different stakes, same thing. So we're working that way, and then based on that brainstorming you did, you can find little bits that match up emotionally, or you can start brainstorming some more because now you have the focus of this beat obviously is the pain that comes from confronting that lost future, that the reality of it, so that gives you a focus to do that. And I know that it's going to be a positive at the end of this, so you can start working that way. The next one obviously starts positive, um, but this guy's in denial. So what I do know is that that at the end of that forcing to confront reality, he's going to go back into denial because he's not ready. So through this writing, he's going to pretend the past still has a future, because that's what I lost. That's what everyone around me lost, and that's what this character is kind of lost. His brother had a future, had a bright one, and that is a representation of our future. So what we do is that we look back and things that we could have had, things are different now. That's not that anymore. So he's going to just pretend that the future still exists. So this is the part where I'd say like I'm allowed to have more liberties to have fun, because like, well, how do you pretend that that future still exists? And this character is a little bit loose and fast when it comes to this section, not in terms of like him as a character, but in terms of what he's doing, because this is going to take a bit more imagination and play and fun, just because it's just him in his apartment trying to write this eulogy. No one else is there. And so allowing him the freedom to pretend things are happening. There's not going to be like any like ghost or any of that stuff. We're just watching a man fall apart, and that is kind of like the denial of him. Like, well, what about this? What about that? And so I've created a brainstorm section that has to involve like how what's fun for me to see and feel, but also what's true for him to like recreate what was robbed from him, or create what was robbed from him, because it's the future of his brother that was robbed from him. you know in this, his brother was a theater guy. He was going to move to New York and really pursue his craft and his heart. The main character is not that, and so he's just he get maybe I wrote down that they were going to write something really together and work something out. So I have him like pretending, or not pretending, doing a little piece of it for his brother. And there's like him running around doing games and such, dancing. I like dancing. I've started noticing in my writing. That's fun. Dancing's fun. I don't know how to do it, but it's fun. um, yeah, and always just kind of, and I always remind myself that this is the section where he's trying to have a total rejection of the pain, and so he's just consumed with the good and the fun of the future that they would have had. But eventually he's got to come down. He's got to come down because ultimately that's not true. Everything that he's doing is not true. Nothing that he has planned or played will come to pass. And so he has to come down to the present. Um, and so that's the next beat. We're going from negative, hopefully, to positive. Negative meaning he's realizing that this is all um, for naught, essentially, because his brother is dead. There's nothing happening there. And so when you go through mourning, what you do is you look back at the past differently than how he has been doing before. Before it was like, oh, this is funny about him, and then he also explored, oh, this is what's great about him for the future. But when you go through mourning, I think you look it's really hard to describe, but you look at the thing that made them good, and there's a feeling that kind of overcomes you, the nostalgic feeling, I guess that might be the word, of the thing that isn't there anymore, but you kind of like it's kind of like held up. And so he's kind of going to go through that now, where he looks at the innocence of his brother that was lost, and now he's going to start slowly chipping away emotionally the kind of like mourning that he's going to have for this loss. Um, it's uh, there's a really sad moment in here where he makes kind of like a fort, and he puts up Christmas lights over the fort and in the fort, and then he on a doorway he hangs these lights, and he's just really quiet as he's basically recreating a fort that they had when they were kids. Um, and then he pretends those lights hanging are stars, and it's like they're doing constellation. They're looking at their future, but he can't bring himself to admit that because of what he knows is there, that his brother's dead, this future isn't happening, and that kind of like brings him down and quiets him down. Um, and the sequence kind of leads to this is where my beat rhythm is starting to change, because I know that I don't have enough time to do all the beats that I would want in a larger kind of a larger story. But like this is kind of like him trying to accept it, but not really ready. But he's like within arm's reach. Um, you know, starting to face what's happening. But now, obviously, I have to really punish my character, unfortunately. So the next sequence is me punishing him through through his like continued ignorance of really dealing with the present. Um, and so let me see. So um, he goes to sleep, and uh, he doesn't necessarily communicate with the people around him through phone what's going to happen, what needs to happen next, or all that stuff. So eventually, some bad stuff happens. But the point is the consequences of his ignorance of not facing the anxiety directly, and not facing the truth of what that anxiety is coming from. And then after that, there's the second to final beat, which is this is all, obviously might change, but the second to final beat is like the final battle when it comes to story structure. And this is him like really having to deal with it. And this is where we have the actual final eulogy. And obviously the eulogy is more for him. It's more for him acknowledging the things that have been lost, the stuff um, that he wanted, all of that, but it has not come to pass. And so it's him just learning, and hopefully learning that it's tragedies happen, lives change, but like you have to move forward even though everything is different now. You have to create your new future based on the experiences of what was lost, hopefully. Um, Through this entire thing, I also came to realize that there's a way to play with the actual ending. So that's the ending, but the actual ending is more metaphorical. So the way to, for me at least, to play aesthetically with this entire film is the entire film takes place in the apartment. So where does it have to end? Outside. I don't know if I said this in the last video. I'll just say it again because I forgot. Um, but so the ending's going to be outside, and throughout the entire thing, there's this recurring motif, right? Motif. There's this recurring thing of uh, his brother would always beat him in a foot race, always beat him. And every once in a while, just another reminder, little nugget. And then so after he does the eulogy, he emotionally settles, and he accepts it, hopefully, because I have to work for it, and he has to work for it too. He it's not going to come easy for him. But the actual ending is this one final thing where he gets up, he leaves his apartment, he walks to the middle of the street, and he starts he just looks down the way, and then he starts walking, then running, then sprinting, and he sprints as hard as he can. He sprints as hard as he can, and until he can't anymore, and then he stops and he starts dancing and cheering and celebrating because he in his in this weird movie he won the race finally. He he beat his brother. He's able to move forward, and this is one kind of way to show it is him like sprinting towards the future. Maybe, I don't know. I'm still working on it. Who knows? Maybe he'll get hit by a car, just like in No Country for Old Men. That'd be great. Um, but anyway, that's kind of like the rhythm that I've gotten, um, because the final and each of these, like I said, each of these sequences have I try to narrow down what they're about, not necessarily what's going on, but what they're about, so that I can have like smaller North Stars in each of these little sections. You have the big one, right? What the film's about emotionally, but then you have these little ones that kind of flow into each other. And so each of these smaller sequences have a reason that all this stuff is happening. And so I like to write it down in bold right next to each one and kind of get me going, so then I know how to brainstorm for that specific sequence, that section, um, to help guide me so that when I have when I finally have my outline and then I pick the things that I want that I brainstorm for each of those sections, it'll kind of go a lot smoother. And then once it's time to write, bam, you're just writing, you know. That's for me personally, because some people like to write by the hip, some people like to be a bit more vague and see what happens. I like a lot of structure. I like to know what I'm doing because I think it's too frightening to write without it. Uh, so um, yeah, so at this point, if you know your characters, you know your structure, you know what each sequence is about, and you know, generally speaking, the things that can happen in them, uh, and you have your North Star for the entire film and the sequences, then I think that's when you can start writing. Like actually writing. I mean, yes, this is writing. This is the process. This is writing. This is where you fucking bang your head against the wall, and this is where you lose all hope, and then you think you're a fucking disaster as a writer. But like I said before, writer's block is just fear. This is where you really deal with fear. If you get past that and you're able to do all this, that's when you can write. That's when you can write the shitty fucking shitty first draft. It's gonna be so terrible. You want to throw up. You want to shit in a toilet because all the shit's coming out. You want to make yourself like a ham sandwich so you can shit some more out because it's so exhausting, because it's so frightening. Get some Gatorade, get those electrolytes, you know, eat a banana and shit some more, and eventually you have a good draft, you know. Uh, but so yeah, I've officially started actually writing. Um, it might be terrible, probably will be, but know that as you write the actual script, um, you could always stop, go back, clarify, clean up your notes and your outlines and all that, just to make it clear for you. I'm always afraid that I'm letting myself off the hook too soon. I would rather go slower and make a more better detailed film, um, than just bum rush it out, um, in terms of notes, because that's the hard work. once you vomit out the first draft, you can still fix it and restructure and all that stuff. It's just like I just want it to be. I'm a I know this is going to sound real weird and roundabout, but I'm a very lazy artist in terms of when it comes down to putting pen to paper, because I want to get the stuff done before I actually write. So that way, it's just so easy, and I'm so lazy. I'm like, blah, 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 blah. Here's the first draft. Silhouette took like a week and a half to like write the first draft, and that was after months of notes uh, and structure edits and all that stuff. Um, One of the new features that I wrote that's like in the back right now is same thing. Took like a week to write the first draft, but that was after months of doing that. Same thing with the short that I was gonna film last weekend. Took months to structure, to brainstorm and all that stuff, but it took like I don't know, like 4 days to like actually write the first draft. And then of course, subsequent drafts, tighten, change things, see what things don't work. So that takes other time, but at least like the actual writing process is done. So anyway, good luck to me figuring the shit out. If I'm lucky, maybe I'll have a solid draft in the middle of fucking April. And then I can storyboard for the rest of fucking April, hopefully. And then I get to hopefully film. Oh, that's be so exciting. Um, yeah. Side note, I also think it's very important to have deadlines, um, fake deadlines, because, we're not real writers and directors. I'm so poor. No, but I want a first draft by the end of this week. And then I'm gonna clean it up and send it out by the middle of next week. That's the goal. Um, and then if there are volunteers to read some of my drafts, send me a message, DM me. You can always email me at contact.sergiolopez@gmail.com or leave a comment with your email or contact information, because I need to get this thing doing that stuff, because I might have money to send to a professional or not, depending if I'm homeless. Anyway, so yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited. I have a lot of things that I really like. I really like the ending, and I really like that tent scene. It makes me emotional. So yeah, that's where I'm at so far. As soon as I don't know when the next video will come up. Maybe if I realize that there's something different about the structure or anything like that, then I'll probably make another video and say like, hey, update, I realized that this whole movie sucks and I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do it something different. Or if I finish a draft and I'm happy with it, and then I'll just talk about the next steps that I usually take. Um, you know, it'll be exciting. And then, I might stream the actual filming of it. Yeah, I'll probably stream the acting stuff. I don't know. But anyway, thanks for hanging out until whenever, right?